everybody. I hope everybody is doing wonderful today or this evening. Depends on what part of the world you're in. Me here in Atlanta, Georgia. We've got some storms rolling in, so if the stream gets cut short, it's possibly because I lost power. Currently, I've got good power. Everything seems to be running all right. So I'll just go ahead and get into it and see what happens tonight. So let's bring this up right here. So, there's a whole bunch of news about the Idaho slain suspect, that is up for extradition. And of course, he waives it. So, we'll read a little bit about that from the AP and a couple other things. And we'll just see, like I said, we'll see where it goes. So it looks like, of course, homeboy here, or home chicken, or whatever you want to call him, he's up for extradition. Should be interesting as he in Stroudsburg, Pennsylvania. The criminology graduate student accused of the November slayings of 4 University of Idaho students agree Tuesday. Let me see if I can bring that zoom in a little bit here. Yeah, there we go. Tuesday to be extradited from Pennsylvania, where he was arrested last week to face charges in Idaho. Still seems pretty small. There we go. Here we are. So Brian Kohberger, the 28-year-old doctoral student at the Washington State University, which of course is a short drive, everybody already knows this, from the murder scene across the state border, will be transported to Idaho within 10 days. Students at the University of Idaho and nearby residents lived in fear for weeks as authorities seemed stumped by the mysterious and brutal stabbings on November 13th. They made a breakthrough after searching for a white sedan around the time of the killings. They analyzed DNA evidence at the crime scene. Investigators have said they are still looking for a murder weapon and motives for the killing. More details about the case are expected to be released after Kohberger arrives in Idaho and an affidavit is unsealed. Wearing a red jumpsuit with his hand shackled in front of him, Kohberger showed little emotion during Tuesday's brief hearing in Pennsylvania courtroom, which he acknowledged facing 4 counts of first-degree murder and a burglary charge. Now, I'm sorry, if you arrested me, not saying that I ever want to be arrested, but if you arrested me and you put me in front of some murder charges, whether I was guilty or not, I probably would have as little reaction as I possibly could, because I don't want that stuff coming back on me. You want me to just start weeping? What do you expect me to do? What is the expected response, AP? Come on, tell me. You got an expected response? Should he be doing little dances? Should he be, shouting out? Should he be screaming and wailing and ripping his clothes off? Come on, people. Tell me. Of course he's going to have little response. Why would he not? Continuing on, Kohberger, who was arrested by the state police at his parents' home in eastern Pennsylvania last Friday, will be held in jail at the Monroe County, Pennsylvania, until his extradition. Kohberger's parents and sister sat in the front row of the courtroom gallery behind the defense table. His mother and sister Melissa broke down as he walked into the courtroom, sobbing quietly and holding on to one another. A sheriff deputy brought them a box of tissues. Kohberger glanced at his family briefly as he was led out of the courtroom. Latah County prosecutors in Idaho have said they believe Kohberger broke into the victim's home near the university campus intending to commit murder. It's, of course, they believe they got their guy. Students were, we already know who the students were. They lived in a 3-story rental home with 2 other roommates. Kernodle and Chapin were dating, and he had been visiting the house that night. The killings have left the rural town of Moscow, Idaho, deeply shaken, and police have released a few details about the investigation. We already know all this stuff. Would-be sleuths attempted to fill the void with their own theories online. This is why I didn't go online about any of this stuff. Well, also it was nice to be out of the loop on this kind of thing, because I don't know what happened. Sorry, I wasn't there. I'm not an investigator in this, so I can't begin to sleuth. I mean, show me some evidence of something one way or the other, and I can make a decision that way. But without it, why? The chief public defender Monroe said his client is eager to be exonerated. Of course, I would want to be also. Kohberger should be presumed innocent and not tried in the court of public opinion. Of course, agree. After Tuesday hearing, Labar described Kohberger as an ordinary guy and said that after his extradition, he would be represented by a chief public defender in Kootenai County, Idaho. Kootenai, maybe? Captain Dollinger of the Moscow Police Department in Idaho told the Associated Press on Saturday that authorities believe Kohberger was responsible for all four slayings at the rental home near campus. We believe we got our man. Added that investigators obtained samples of Kohberger's DNA directly from him after he was arrested. Of course, why would you do it before? Pennsylvania State Police Major Christopher Paris said Tuesday that Kohberger's warrant merited an after-dark arrest, which requires a higher standard of probable cause. We wanted to go in at a time when he thought it would be safest for everybody, safest for anybody else in the house, safest for Mr. Kohberger, and safest for our people. The tactical response team reviewed floor plans of the home and broke multiple doors and windows when they entered. DNA evidence played a key role in identifying Kohberger as a suspect, and officials were able to match his DNA to genetic material recovered during the investigation, a law enforcement official said last week. Well, okay, so he said something last week. Does that necessarily mean that it was him? He could have been there at a party. Any number of things could have happened that his DNA would be there. That being said, because also that's the other thing. While they're talking about this DNA genetic material recovered during the investigation, this is just a law enforcement official said. They don't identify who the law enforcement official is. Is he close to the case, or is he a law enforcement official in Pittsburgh? Maybe he's a law enforcement official in California. We don't know. Of course, they say the official spoke on condition of anonymity because they were not authorized to publicly discuss details of the ongoing investigation. But he just did. In addition, the DNA evidence authorities also learned Kohberger had a white Hyundai Elantra. The officials who spoke anonymously said Moscow police had already identified the Hyundai Elantra seen near the scene of the crime and asked the public for help in finding it. Tips poured in, and Idaho investigators soon were trying to narrow down a list of roughly 20,000 possible vehicles to find the right one. Indiana State Trooper announced Tuesday on December 15th that trooper stopped the white Hyundai on Interstate 70 for following too closely. A body camera worn by the trooper appeared to show Brian in the driver's seat, police said. At the time, there was no information available to the trooper that would have identified him as a suspect in the Idaho killings, the agency said, and he was released with a verbal warning. Yeah, it's not uncommon. Kohberger had also been stopped a few minutes earlier by a deputy from Hancock County Sheriff for following too closely and given verbal warning. So he was stopped twice because he's following too closely. Federal and state investigators are combing through his background, financial records, and electronic communications as they work to build the case against him. Good luck. The investigators are also interviewing people who knew Kohberger, including those at the university, which, if people were to find out about me, like just find out who I was, for example, and I was accused of doing something. My neighbors would have a different opinion. Is some other neighbors might have a different opinion. Some other neighbors over here might have a different opinion, depending on my level of interaction with them. So neighbors to one side of me might think I'm a complete jerk, where the neighbors across the street say they've only interacted with me a couple of times. And the other ones would say, I do work with my hands. Depending on the questions that you ask them, it could be any number of answers that you would get from any number of people. So, going around reporters questioning, people that knew him. Well, did they really know him? How much time did they spend with him? Did they go out to hang out with him? Did they go drinking with him? Did they, share meals, watch football games together? Depends on what the interaction is. It could have been any number of things. I mean, I had a neighbor at one place that I lived that absolutely despised me and my roommates. She thought that we were the devil's spawn. And I would disagree. I think her children were the devil's spawn, and she might agree with that. And she was very abusive towards them. But that's neither here nor there. Just knowing that, her opinion of us as compared to our other neighbors were much different. Just saying. So I take those witnesses for a grain of salt. Kohlberger's relatives in Pennsylvania have expressed sympathy for the family of the victims, but vowed to support him and promote his presumption of innocence, as they should. They've asked for information. Investigators have asked for information about Kohlberger from anyone who knows him, and Dollinger said investigator got 400 calls to a tip line within the first hour of that request. And if you've seen some of the other podcasts, they show this interview with some random girl that may or may not have dated him. Looks like she might have gotten turned down, or who knows. I'm not going to pull that stuff up because I find it absolutely redundant, boring, and stupid that some random ex-girlfriend from years ago, whenever supposedly he was a heroin addict or some sort of thing like that. If you want more information on it, feel free to search it out. I'm not even going to entertain it because I don't trust people like that. If you would have talked to my ex before I met my wife, I'm sure she would have a completely different opinion about me and the type of person that I am. She would also probably reveal some very interesting things about my past that only she would know. Not that that's a bad thing. It's not like I did horrible, terrible things. But just saying, she had things that she probably would love to burn me under the bus with. And I could do the same, but I'm just not that kind of person. I say let bygones be bygones. We both move on with our lives, and everybody's happier for it. There you go. Anyhow, as we were saying, so Boone contributed to this report from Boise, Idaho. But that's the kind of stuff that you're gonna run into with their BS. It's completely nonsensical. Your internet sleuths that are looking to figure out the next big thing that's happening. I mean, if you ever get a chance, follow Meme Copium. He does a very good analysis of all of this. He is really, really straight up out of the box, just entertaining. And I watched his interesting take on some of this, or bits of it, whenever I can. And he delivered it out. I didn't watch some of his earlier stuff just because, part of this is interesting, but it's not enough that I do a deep dive into that. especially with not enough information given. And I'm sure as this Kohberger's hearing draws closer, they still have to build a case. It could be quite some time before this case is brought forward. But just know that, this particular person has been arrested, and it's for a jury of his peers to find out whether he's actually guilty or innocent. It's not up for me to decide. And you're welcome to make your wild speculations, but I'm not going to do that here. I appreciate you watching, and hit the like, subscribe. It's down here somewhere, Hit it if you want to, spread the word around. Be nice to get some more people in here to enjoy the jokes. Yeah, I'm not really that funny. I don't even try most of the time. Sure, something I say might be funny. But of course, now we move into more of the United States news. That's always good stuff. So, McCarthy fails in marathon votes for Speaker. This has already happened before. Failing to elect party leader Kevin McCarthy as new Speaker of the House of Republicans adjourned in disarray on Tuesday night, ending a raucous first day of the new Congress, but hoping to somehow regroup on Wednesday from its historic defeat. So if you got a chance to watch that, fun. It was on. It was on, I'm sure, just about every C-SPAN station that you could possibly have. It was not really that big of a deal. It looks like they cast votes 4 times. And each time it seemed like there was some people in the Republican Party that did not want to have McCarthy. And, we'll see where it ends up. I believe they resume again at 12. I don't know if that's AM. I believe it's PM. So it'll probably be 12 tomorrow, and try it again. So he's basically got to try to get some support for his bid to being the Speaker of the House. We'll see. It'd be nice if it did happen, just to have it done and out of the way. But there's no guarantee that, this guy is going to be even worth a damn. I don't know too much about McCarthy, so I've got no opinion on that whatsoever. But if you're following that, just know that they will be voting again, and they will pick up where they left off. Everybody's going to take a little bit of a break, and they will do what they need to do. But this is more important why I wanted to stream tonight, and it has to do with this little guy right here. In case you can't see him, that little guy right there, him. Yep, right there. Okay. So that's SBF. So in New York, FTX founder SBF pleaded not guilty in Manhattan federal court Tuesday to charges that he cheated investors and looted customer deposits on his cryptocurrency trading platform, as a judge set a tentative trial date for October. SBF denied charges accusing him of illegally diverting massive sums of customer money from FTX to make lavish real estate purchases, donate money to politicians, and make risky trades at Alameda Research, his cryptocurrency hedge fund trading firm. SBF's attorney, Mark Cohen, announced his client's plea, saying he pleads not guilty to all counts. Of course you would. Afterwards, Judge Lewis A. Kaplan set a tentative trial date of October 2nd, saying he might move it forward or backward a day or two. A prosecutor estimated it would take the government a month to present its case to a jury, while a defense lawyer projected putting in a case lasting 2 to 3 weeks. Of course, wearing a backpack SBF marched through a crush of cameras as he entered the courthouse on a rainy day to make his first appearance before Kaplan. In a courtroom, SBF appeared relaxed through most of the half-hour-long proceeding, occasionally speaking to a lawyer next to him. When they left court, he did not speak to reporters outside. It's probably a wise idea. Now, if you want to see, check out the shoes. Now, I saw this before. That's a nice pair of shoes, but you'll also notice that he has no shoelaces in those shoes. A little odd, but okay. Why? I'd be relaxed if I was just wearing basically a pair of slip-ons also. Oh, where was I? After SBF pleaded not guilty, the judge discussed with lawyers a schedule for proceeding towards trial, setting April dates for defense lawyers to submit arguments challenging the validity of charges and for prosecutors to respond to them. Oral arguments were set for May 18th, which should be quite interesting. If we won't be able to see any of that from what I understand. The judge also added to SBF's bail condition by banning him from accessing or transferring cryptocurrencies or assets, or any assets purchased with funds from the companies. He did so after U.S. Attorney Daniel Sassoon and said SBF had worked with foreign regulators to transfer FTX assets to them after FTX declared bankruptcy, and he knew U.S. bankruptcy authorities were also interested in those assets. So they basically have the goods on him as far as him transferring funds to Bahamian authorities. Wonder why. We'll get into that because this, I think, goes a little bit deeper, and I think the wool is being pulled over people's eyes about him. Sassoon said SBF expressed to a co-conspirator that he knew there was a competition between U.S. bankruptcy authorities and foreign regulators, and he wanted to get the assets to foreign regulators in part because he thought they'd be more lenient with him and he might be able to regain control of his business. Those are pipe dreams. Cohen, though, insisted that SBF had not personally transferred any assets and that anything that was moved came at the insistence of a court in the Bahamas that ordered it to occur. So you basically screw people out of billions of dollars, and you're going to worry about the place that let you do that. Wonder. Like I said, it gets shadier and shadier. Sassoon, noting FTX was the second largest cryptocurrency exchange, also told the judge that the government hoped to create a website for victims of the fraud rather than notify them individually, since they might number over 1 million. Prior to his appearances, lawyers sent a letter to the judge saying SBF's parents, both Stanford Law School professors, in recent weeks have become a target of intense media scrutiny, harassment, and threats. They should be heavily scrutinized. I do not agree with harassing nor threatening them, but they should definitely be scrutinized, and every bit of their life should be picked apart in the finest details. Just saying. They were lined in on this stuff, and they should be. We already know that SBF did this. They said the parents have received a steady stream of threatening correspondence, including communications expressing a desire that they suffer physical harm. Now, that I see nothing wrong with. Personally, I don't see wishing a desire for physical harm upon somebody. But making a threat to do it, that's a different story. That takes it a step beyond, and I would suggest anybody do not do that. As a result, the lawyers have asked the names to be redacted on court documents for two individuals who are lined up to sign SBF's $250 million personal recognizance bond. SBF was Why? We should know who those people were. Imagine this. It's your favorite person in the world. Say it's the Pope and Elon Musk are the two co-donors. Do you think you'd want to be paying really close attention to how they're involved in it? Because it brings a lot of shade to those particular people. I mean, imagine that it's someone well known that's coming up with that kind of money to basically bail this person out. What if it's somebody that works for the U.S. government or is employed by the U.S. government? That would be something that would be very important to know moving forward. Say it's Zelensky put up that bond using money that he got from FTX or someone from the Bohemian authorities. I think that's very important to know. Just saying. The judge allowed the names to remain secret from now, but he said that he may reconsider his decision if the members of the media or others object. What does the media have to do with it? But I think everybody should object to it. Carolyn Ellison, 28, who ran Alameda, and Gary Wang, 29, who co-founded FTX, have pleaded guilty to fraud charges and are cooperating with prosecutors in a bid for leniency. Both are free on bail. I think that they should be heavily monitored, though. Their pleas were kept secret until SBF was in the air for his extradition from the Bahamas, where FTX is based, due to fears that he might flee. Shortly before his arraignment, U.S. Attorney Damon Williams announced that he was launching a task force made of senior prosecutors in his office to investigate and prosecute matters related to the FTX collapse. He said the task force will also work to trace and recover victim assets. Of course, we already know all about that. And it's no surprise that, this guy's out there able to basically be free and not sitting in prison. I think that he should be sitting in prison. He should have been denied bail. And if he's found to be not guilty of this, okay. Which, coming to that, because this is where I think that that SBF is the patsy for all of this. And even if he does get any sort of time, it's say at the most he gets 20 years. So he spends 20 years in a white collar place and he can pretty much, chill. It's not like he's going to be working on chain gang. He's not going to be around violent criminals because it's a white collar crime. He'll be able to come back bigger and better and bolder. Just saying. So the reason that I get a little bit like this with this particular guy right here is I find it fascinating that, and I'm gonna play this hearing. I may skip over some stuff because it's absolute BS. Let me share this. And there we go. So this right here. Whether increased regulation would have prevented the spectacular collapse of the cryptocurrency exchange FTX was fiercely debated at a hearing. And this was Wednesday, December. This was before the holidays. So they had this little hearing. So they want to basically, let's separate digitals from corrupt organizations. FTX is good old-fashioned fraud. Loomis, like several other Republicans on the banking committee, said the alleged financial crimes of FTX should not be used to target cryptocurrency more generally, and she's incorrect in that. However, Sherrod Brown, and I'll just play this because it is absolute BS. The fact that these people don't know anything about cryptocurrency and the questions that some of them were so asinine and so ridiculous to show their stupidity. I'm surprised that any of them can actually even write a check. I mean, it is really stupid questions, and it's probably just best to share this tab instead because it's
television providers, giving you a front row seat to democracy.
anyway,
too, that they probably need to show up in person. So that's our issue, certainly not the witnesses. I want to express my gratitude to the Department of Justice, the SEC, the CFTC, and the Bahamian authorities for taking the critical step to hold Sam Bankman-Fried accountable for his misdeeds.
yeah.
I'd like to thank Ranking Member Toomey and his staff. Thank you
Yeah.
for
We know.
working with me and Mike, but from no matter the risk to consumers or to our economy. Members of this committee, others in the financial system,
Continue.
with US consumers, of course, continues. Even though Facebook shelved its crypto plans in the last 2.5 years, the statement
has nothing to do with it.
Tokens has exploded, even as the total value of all crypto assets fell by two-thirds in the last year.
That has nothing to do with FTX. That those kinds of things had, well, some of it did have to do with SBF, in the way that he was doing some shady trades. But they won't bring up any of that information about him buying out certain crypto companies, about crypto companies going under, about the shady shit that they were doing, about their bankruptcies, about Three Arrows Capital. They're not bringing any of the actual financial institutions into this. That's what is so annoying, because you're not going to hear one iota. You're going to hear about FTX, but you're not going to hear about Three Arrows Capital. You're not going to hear about Voyager. You're not going to hear about Celsius. You're not going to hear about 3Com. You're not going to hear about any of the players. You're not going to hear about. You might hear a little bit about Alameda, but most of this you're not even going to hear about. They're going to keep it quiet. They're not going to hear about the money that's being sent off to Ukraine through FTX, or the money that's coming back to FTX from Ukraine. You're not going to hear about the donations. And if you do, it's going to be very minimal, because everybody who was guilty of this bullshit. Let's continue on.
I've noted in the past similarities that cryptocurrencies share with risky mortgage bonds and over-the-counter derivatives during the lead up to the financial crisis. In all these cases, they told us how great innovation is and how derivatives make markets efficient.
Well, if you pay any attention, you know that this guy right here basically thinks that crypto is absolutely bad, horrible. Does it mean that it is? I don't know. Like I said, listen to what they have to say, because they're, like I said, they're making FTX and Sam Bankman-Fried the fall guy, but there were people that were funding them. They were FTX was a small player on this whole stage. Just because you're the second largest crypto exchange in the world, how did he get there? Who funded him to get there? How did he go from running Alameda to doing a startup crypto exchange to be able to get it passed through the SEC? And we're talking in record time. We're not talking just, this was, years and years of hard work. This was in record time. They went from being nothing to them claiming that SBF was going to be the new whatever super mega genius financial guru.
Wall Street made it easy for everyone to get a mortgage, so bankers could create more mortgage bonds and increase profits. Making money in crypto seems so easy.
And this is where they fail. Crypto isn't about making money. I'm sure that there's people that want to buy into it to make money. Crypto, in its original design, which was Bitcoin at the very beginning of it, was not designed for people to make money. It was basically to make it where banks couldn't screw you out of making bad loans, which created the loan crisis that this guy was one of the signers for to create the shit in the first place that caused the housing collapse. It's one of the same people that created the bad situation.
Too easy. Every crypto token could double or triple in value in a matter of hours. And
if you're doing that, then you're an idiot. Just saying, if you're buying and selling crypto because you want to make, you're looking for the next big bang, it's going to be absolute pure luck, and good luck to you. And don't bank more than you can lose, because you will lose.
Days. It didn't matter if it was created with the
Yeah.
weekend before our stablecoin hearing last February. We saw crypto companies spending big money on Super Bowl ads to attract more customers.
Yeah, I mean, if you were a Coca-Cola company or a cola company, you would probably be buying Super Bowl ads to bring in more customers. Don't see anything wrong with that.
And pump up crypto tokens. I appreciated the comments of one of you in this panel on public radio today about that.
Public radio. Oh, yeah, you guys are a fucking bunch of bright ones.
Crypto, like Facebook's Libra before it, was the shiny tool supposed to capture our imagination and revolutionize our lives. Wealthy celebrity spokespeople told Americans, if you're not buying crypto, you're missing out.
Who were the celebrity spokespeople, and who were they being paid by? Just saying. I'm not telling anybody to buy anything. You buy what you like. Me, I've got some crypto. Would I recommend anybody else do it? No. Do what you want to. It's your freaking money. But this guy doesn't want you to take control of your money.
Crypto platforms created dozens of investment products that look and sound like bank deposits, using words like lend and earn, or tokens that resemble securities and have a yield.
See, and he's just talking out of his mouth, because one side of his mouth and not understanding the other. Actually, he knows what he's talking about, and he knows it's absolute BS, because he is probably highly against crypto because, well, you can't control it. If they can't control it, they can't make their money off of it whenever they do little shady things on the side.
Or governance rights, yet these products had none of the safeguards of bank deposits or securities.
Bank deposits do not have safeguards. Let me be very clear with this. You think your money is safe. I will tell you. Imagine having billions of dollars. Just, you've got billions of dollars. Do you think you can walk into the bank and just say, write me out a check for my billions of dollars, and I want you to put it in a briefcase? They're going to look at you like you are effing crazy. Well, where would you like to transfer it to? The thing about crypto is you can track every single transaction. You can see where it's going. Some of these projects are going to win. Some of them will fail. Some of them are just absolute scams. They're dog coins and rocket coins and sex coins and whatever coins you want to make. It's no different than a bunch of people owning bottle caps. If that's what people were using to trade, then people would be trying to get the most bottle caps, and they would do anything they could to trade those. And the government would want to come in and get a chunk of those bottle caps. They would want their skin. Just saying.
Crypto firms, their backers argued that billions of dollars invested.
Who were their backers? Look at yourself. Who are their backers of most of these companies? Because FTX didn't start from nothing. Or did they? Where did they get all the funding from?
Lending programs or earning yield should be exempt from basic oversight and regulatory.
No, and no. They are not exempt from the oversight of basic regulatory. There is more advanced regulatory services that need to be done. And if you do a self-regulation, you can stop a lot of the actual garbage from hitting the market. It's no different than somebody doing penny stocks. Some of these companies are worth absolute nothing because they're saturated. There's a reason why you can buy the Shiba Inu coin for 0.000008 or whatever the price might be at this point in time. There's a reason why you can buy those. You could take 1 penny and you could buy like 1,000 Shiba Inu or 100,000 Shiba Inu. You spend $20, you can be a millionaire in Shiba Inu coins. Does it mean it's worth anything? Maybe. I don't know. You tell me. you should be free to, be a complete idiot and do stupid things with your money. I mean, I could go out and buy a bunch of, God forbid, some Pfizer stock, and it could completely tank tomorrow. Every single bit of it could just be, boom, in the bucket, get bought out for pennies on the dollar. Those, millions of dollars that I spent in shares could be turned around to be absolutely worthless. I mean, think about this. Elon Musk, $44 billion, bought Twitter. $44 billion that he bought Twitter. And the day that it was unlisted from the exchange, it was worth 40 something per share. So he had to make up that shortfall to the people that had already, put in whatever amount of money because they sold for $54 a share. That's it. He lost money on that deal. So he's got to make up for the shortfall somewhere if he wants that platform to exist. It's a dangerous game, and sometimes you're going to lose. You're going to make bad decisions. Sometimes it's worth making that bad decision because you know that the value of it might be worth more than gold. Think about all the people that were so against Bitcoin back in, was it 2018 or 2008, where it was hundreds of thousands. I mean, there was a guy that bought pizza with like 100,000 Bitcoin or some crap like that. If he would have never bought that pizza and just held on to that until 2020, whenever it was hitting $64,000 per coin, that guy would be a billionaire. But he bought pizza with it instead. Just saying. What am I to say what the value of something is? What I find valuable, somebody else might not. I mean, there's people that'll spend millions of dollars on rare instruments. Me, I'll spend a couple $100. Whenever I'm tired of it, I will sell it for whatever I want to get out of it. And if I think that it's worth more than the price of gold, I'll sell it for that. But most of them I don't. It's just a piece of wood. It's great to play. It's fun to enjoy. Don't be a fool. Fools are easily parted with their funds.
Protections. That's not how regulation works. The things that look and behave like securities, commodities, banking products need to be regulated and supervised by the responsible agencies who protect the public and serve consumers.
But they don't.
Crypto doesn't get a free pass because it's shiny and bright, or because venture capitalists think it might change the world, or its TV campaigns were witty and featured famous people.
He's right.
Especially when so many consumers are at risk of losing hard-earned money. And that's before we even consider how crypto is ushered in a whole...
As I said, fools are easily parted with their money. Completely and easily parted with their money. Don't be a fool with your money if you don't want to be parted with it. I've been to casinos, and I can probably count it on all my hands. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 times. I've been to casinos 9 times. The first time I went, I lost $200. Joke not, $200 gone. But I went with this really old guy that, was in the neighborhood, and he said, if you're interested, I can't drive all the way, but I really want to go to Biloxi. Biloxi, they have riverboat casinos. They're not really riverboat casinos. They sit on the river. It's a regulation thing. But this I digress. Went and drove him all the way down there, and he supplied the food, he supplied the gas. He just wanted to go have some fun. And I spent my $200 because I think I went with 300, and he told me, because I'd never been gambling before, I'm not a gambler. He said, "Tell you what, go with the amount of money that you're fine losing." You know, my rent wasn't very much. I was like, well, I got a couple $100 that, I can, if I was parted with it, it would suck, but it's not going to kill me. So I went, I lost that $200. I had so much fun. I was there from, about 5 o'clock at night until, 6 or 7 o'clock the next morning, whenever he was ready to go. And I had food, I had drinks. I mean, I probably drank at least $200 worth of alcohol. Drinks at that point were free, because they want you to part with your money. I was like having fun. And all I did was, like a couple of slot machines and played some blackjack. There would be times I was up, times I was down. But yeah, lost about $200. I was like, oh. And on the way back, I talked to him about it, and I was just like, yeah, I lost $200. He goes, well, next month I want to go again. He goes, and I'll show you a couple of tricks so you don't lose any money. I was like, all right, let's take it from the old guy. He's been doing this a while. So we go, and he sits me down, and he says, what I want you to do, and this is a really good, simple thing. It's not foolproof, because, fools are easily parted with their money, as you were last time you were here. He said, what I want you to do is you pick one thing that you want to do. And I was like, well, I had fun at the blackjack table. He goes, well, go to your blackjack table. It doesn't have to be a high stakes thing. He goes, what I want you to do is I want you to set your money down there, and every time that you win, I want you to take that amount and put it in your right pocket. Just put it in there. And spend out of your left pocket. Put that stuff up there. And that's what you're gambling with. I was like, all right, that sounds good. So I did. And by God, I went through, I think at that point it was about $500 I had on me. I was able to part with that. And so every time that I would win a hand, I would get my winnings and I would drop it over in my right pocket. And he said, whenever that left pocket is empty, he goes, I want you to reach into your right pocket and pull that same amount that you were gambling with, and pull it out. And by God, I was like, okay. So I count out the $500 again, and I put it in my left pocket. And he goes, take those winnings and put it in that right pocket. And whenever that left pocket is empty, you're done. And rinse and repeat. It's like, this is crazy. This is never going to work. So what I did is I ended up that particular night, I went into my pocket a total of 3 times. So I'd take those winnings, I'd put them in there, losings there. At the end of 3 times, I had close to $6,000 in my right pocket. I was like, how in the hell does that happen? How do I end up with $600, $6,000? Me, the bright fool that I am, decided to up the ante to 1,000. And that pocket on the right emptied out a little bit quicker than the pocket on the left. Just saying. I managed to walk away with about $2,000 that night. It was somewhere around in there, 2,000 some odd change. But I could have walked out of there with about 6,000 if I would have stopped after those 3 times and just called it a night. And I learned that lesson, because that was my second time. The third time, third time my ass was foolish enough to go to a casino was with my now wife. At the time, we were just dating. Went to Louisiana for Mardi Gras, and there's a casino that wasn't too far from where our friends were staying. And I had a couple of drinks, and it was getting late, and I was not tired. And this is before I started getting really skittish about being around large crowds. I think that that's what sort of turned me a little more towards not being. I guess there's some agoraphobia or some shit like that's involved in it, but this is before that happened. So it's like, you know what? I think I want to go to the casino. And she goes, "You're gonna go to the casino tonight?" And she was tired and a little drunk, and I was a little bit. I wasn't there. I was like, I think I want to go. And at the time, I actually smoked, and I'm pretty sure. Yeah, you could still smoke in the casino at that time. My happy ass was making quite a bit more money, and I had probably about $1,500. Not a whole lot of money. I mean, you're not rich whenever you're young and stupid, which is probably a good thing. Sometimes you can be. So I was like, all right, well let's take my happy ass down to the casino. I get down there, and that memory of what that old guy taught me was, take those winnings and put in there. And I remember going, I remember that I could have walked out of here with a lot more money. I'm not upping the ante this time. I'm going to do it a small amount at a time and see how it goes. I was there for a total of 4 hours. And whenever I cashed out those chips, let's put it this way, it took care of a lot. A lot. I won really well. But my dumbass, which I've learned my lesson, is know where in the hell you're at all times and don't be so blitzkrieged. I walked out of the casino and couldn't figure out how the hell to get home. I literally walked around that casino with a very large amount of cash. This was 3 hours, but I just got completely turned around. Once I figured out where I needed to go, I was actually able to make it back. Nothing bad happened to me by the grace of somebody up higher than me. And I got back to the place and, of course, woke my girlfriend up at the time. She's now my wife. Woke her up at the time. And she goes, "Oh, how did you do?" I was like, "Well, I got a little lost coming out of there, and I think I did okay." And I hadn't counted the money at this point in time, but I had a large wad of cash, and I just started pulling it out. And the hundreds keep coming, and the fives, and the tens, and the 20s, and I'm just throwing it all out there. And she's looking at it, and she's scooping it up, and she's looking at me going, "Well, who in the hell are you?" And she just started stacking this money up and goes, "This is a lot of money." I was like, "Yep." And I'm of course, by this time, the alcohol is really hit, and I'm really drunk. And I was like, "But I'm going to sleep, and I'll count it in the morning." Next morning, get up, and she goes, "Oh, you know what? You paid for our vacation. You paid for our food. Paid for everything. Do you want to go gambling again tomorrow?" I was like, "Absolutely not, because I got too drunk last night, and something bad could have happened to me, and I'm not doing that again. At least not here. I had a good time. It was a good amount of money, and I don't feel any need to make a repeat of that again." But she was quite impressed that I could actually walk away with that money. And the other times that I did my gambling, it was for my bachelor's party, which I ended up making a decent amount of money, and that was pretty impressive because I had a sagging face from Bell's palsy. So half of my face was basically completely numb, and I had to wear an eye patch and take eye drops and all that kind of crap. And I got accused of chewing snuff, and I had to explain to him I had Bell's palsy, which, sometimes gets you some free stuff. Just, looking like a complete doofus, whenever you're saying, oh, you can't be coming in and chewing. I was like, chewing what? I was like, am I chewing am I drooling again? And just, yeah, that was pretty intensive. But let me bring this one up really quick, because we'll get back to the whole hearing with these people, because I think they're a bunch of fools. But we'll share this one here, because I saw a lot of stuff on this today that I think is absolute BS. Whenever you get down to it, I think it's absolute garbage, and the way that people are discussing it, I think it is just horrid. And like I said, don't believe everything that you hear. Do a little bit of research on your own, and take some of this with a grain of salt. And let me just share this, and it'll become clear what I'm talking about whenever I do. So, NFL star Damon Hamlin still is in critical condition after a cardiac arrest. Of course, we all know this story because everybody has been talking about it. And it's just really great how much, people have come together in support of this guy. But you've got these idiots that get online and they want to start blaming the jabs. They want to start pointing at other things, and they don't know what's going on. And then, of course, you see stuff like this that doesn't help it out a whole lot. You see stuff like this where they talk about, heart rhythm, sudden death in young people, heart problems often blamed. And of course they go, well, oh, there it is. Your carditis may occur in athletes who are hit hard in the chest by sports equipment by another player. This condition doesn't damage the heart muscle. Instead, it changes the heart electrical signal. Blow of the chest can trigger this kind of fibrillation if it strikes a specific time in a signaling cycle. And they start going off about how, this could be the absolute cause of why all of these, soccer players and football players and baseball players and, damage, and everybody's getting these heart attacks. And then they say, oh, look, this was produced in June 10th of 2022. This has got to be some sort of conspiracy because, this wasn't prevalent any time before that. And it's complete, absolute BS. And they start going off on their little fucking, tangents. This is what I mean about being lied to. Do a little more research, because what I want to show you right here, this comes from the American Heart Association journals. The impact of physical activity on sudden cardiac death is somewhat controversial, although vigorous exercise can trigger sudden cardiac death and acute myocardial infarction. In part, possibly. I'll zoom in here a little bit. Oh, magnitude of the problem. Age and race. We'll zoom this out just a little bit. Activity. That was what I was after right there. Activity. 300,000, bigger percentage of more than 300,000 who die suddenly. And this is just from activity. Magnitude of the problem, influence, activity. And it'll say the cardiac rehabilitation, cardiac arrest occur in a rate of 1 in 12,000 to 15,000 during stress testing. Cardiac arrest occurs at 1 in 2,000, at least 6 times greater. And maybe regular exercise. The annual incidence of sudden cardiac death due to exercise is 1 per 200,000 to 250,000 healthy young people, whereas competitive athletes, sudden cardiac death is very rare despite the publicity, with only 20 to 25% sports related. And of course, the cardiac death most often occurs with hypertonic cardiomyopathy. I'm not going to go into all these different ones that they have, but right there, you're going to see that this big thing right here is the commotio chordatus. And that is the concussion of the heart from a non-penetrating blunt trauma to the anterior chest can lead to fatal cardiac arrest due to either myocardial trauma or basically they're basically saying that, things get knocked off kilter. Now you say, well, this has got to be some new information. And I will tell you, when this was produced, and it'll take a little bit for me to actually get there because this is a very long article. This is why I didn't read it all the way through. This was published the 24th of November, 1998. You hear that? That was originally published 24th of November, 1998. So whenever your sorry asses want to get out there and you want to say, oh, my theory on this bullshit is that it is got to be something absolutely new. It's horrendous. It's got to be the vax. It could be this. It could be that. You know what? Why don't you just take a look, chill the fuck out, figure out what the actual problem is. Any number of things could have happened. I saw the hit. To me, I thought that they were blaming it on some sort of head trauma, but I didn't see any sort of head trauma. And then it was explained, oh, it's because where he got hit in the chest. And I was like, oh, okay, I can see that. You hit it at the right spot at the right time. Bad shit can happen. Do I know that's what happened? No, I don't know what happened. I'm not a doctor. But I'm telling you, before you start losing your shit on the internet over some absolute bullshit, because you're sitting there saying, oh, geez, I've got to jump on the latest trend of whatever anti-vax or vax or whatever the freak your issue is with other people, another reason to be outraged and pissed off. Why don't you think about it and just do a little bit of research on your own? Wait for some of the results to come in. It's no different. It is no different than whenever you're looking at some person that's done absolute horrible things, like, the guy in Idaho. Maybe he did, maybe he didn't. Wait until you hear in a court what actually happened. That is unlike SBF. It is completely unlike what he did. He knows what he did was absolutely wrong. And that's why he pled guilty to it. Or not guilty. Doesn't matter. We all know he's guilty of, basically doing really bad shit. But as I said, your eyes are still being pulled over you on this kind of stuff. And it's one of those things where you try to explain to people that these things, like this little asshole here, they don't know what the hell they're talking about whenever they're talking about crypto. And you'll see throughout this entire hearing that on the Republican side, you've got quite a few of them that are asking some serious questions of their panel. And on the Democrat side, for whatever reason, they go off on these tangents that make no sense and are so uninformed and childish. It's like they're making the argument of like a 5-year-old child. It is so horrible just to watch the actual stupidity of these people.
New dimension of fraud and threats to national security. People are talking about that more and more because it's a central issue in this, that support dangerous nation states, embolden criminals, finance terrorists, North Korea.
And this is the same thing that banks are doing. They're financing criminals. And this is why I think that FTX is going to be used as a fall guy for the shit that they're doing with Ukraine.
It uses crypto stolen in hacks to finance its ballistic missile program. Think of that.
Name one. Name one. Name one country that is using crypto to finance wars. And I can name many countries that are using the United States dollars to fund their wars. How much money did you leave in Afghanistan whenever you pulled out? Go on. Tell me there, Senator Sherrod Brown. Explain to me, how much money did you leave on pallets in Afghanistan when you pulled out? How many vehicles, how many aircraft did you leave in Afghanistan when you pulled out?
Traffickers, drug cartels, gun runners launder their proceeds using crypto assets.
And they you can easily launder cash much easier than you can launder crypto.
For that. And some of these laundered funds end up bankrolling terrorists, bent on undermining our nation and our society. Think of that.
Wrong.
The ability of rogue states, cyber criminals, terrorists to use crypto for their own malign purposes is a feature of technology. And that's the point. Crypto also has made it easier for fraudsters and scammers to steal consumers' money.
Absolutely true. I will not deny him that. That is very true. It has made it much easier for fraudsters and scammers to steal people's money, but whenever they get called out and busted, they end up like SBF. Just keep that in mind. But I will also say, if you've ever seen someone pull 3-card Monty, do not ever.
Hacks and complex crypto transactions make it easy to steal billions of dollars of investors' money.
That is true, but also it can be recovered and they know where those funds went. 9 times out of 10, whenever someone hacks, those hacked funds, if they recognize the hack and they actually see it happen, those funds become basically like a stolen hope diamond. Because the minute that they try to spend it or exchange it or try to put it on an exchange, it tracks all the way back to where that wallet is, because all of those wallets are a ledger. And think about that. Say, for example, someone comes in and they steal $1 million worth of Dogecoin. But in 10 days, that billions of dollars worth of Dogecoin is worth about 50 cents. So what did they get away with? What did they actually get away with? Did they get away with $1 billion? Did they get away with 50 cents? Depends on when they sold it. Say they held on to it for 10 years before they sold it, like someone recently did and was actually caught with it. Just saying. Those people will always be caught. There's always, because it is on the blockchain, it is always traceable where that money goes. Even if you're moving it from wallet to wallet to wallet to wallet. That's why those blenders came in and people were using what's called a blender, because at the rate that it was happening, all those transfers, they couldn't keep up with every single one of them, although it was just an illusion. If you dug down deep enough, you could probably track it, but there's a possibility that they would have cashed out at that point in time. Yes, it is possible. There's a reason why people use blenders and things of this sort, is so they can actually wash money and the government can't track their kind of spending. I don't see anything wrong with that if you're doing everything on the up and up. But it's whenever you've got a criminal that actually has the same access to those kinds of tools that's being run through a blender that it becomes a little more sketchy than it was beforehand. And a lot of times they're doing it on the down low. Me personally, I've got several different cryptos. Some of them might be worth something. Some of them might be absolute garbage. Like I said, take my winnings, I put it in my right pocket. All the losings come out of my left pocket. And whenever the left pocket is empty, I might pull a little bit out and add it back into that right pocket or that left pocket. But generally, I'm trying to make out like a bandit at the right time. I know how much I'm wanting to lose. I know how much that I'm willing to spend. Those two coincide, and then I go, well, let's see. I am fine with losing X amount of dollars. I'm going to gamble on it. I'm going to throw it in there. And if it does well, this is where I want to get out at. You know, it's like that old song with Kenny Rogers. Got to know when to hold 'em, know when to fold 'em, know when to walk away, know when to run. You never count your money. When you're sitting at the table, there'll be time enough for counting when the dealing's done. Just remember that, because that right there is the important thing. You have to know when your time is up and when you want to be out of those particular trades. Is the same way if you're doing it in stocks, if you're doing it in bonds, if you're investing in any particular thing. You have to know when the good time is for you to get out. You know, it's stupid the way that these people play.
That's what we saw with FTX.
Yes,
that
we know.
Impress us. We're still also.
And then we've got these boneheads up
crypto.
Here. Yeah.
It's no surprise in 2018, Alameda solicited investors by guaranteeing 15% returns with.
And who is funding Alameda?
For a year, it's not far too many Ohioans. If we're going back out,
let's go back.
Than the guaranteed 11%. That a guy named Bernie.
So they're
Madoff
talking about
offered.
Alameda.
With Madoff and with Sam Bankman-Fried, investors didn't ask questions for fear of missing out.
No, they didn't ask questions because they were being promoted by your government. That was a wonderful thing.
It's a good reminder that most guaranteed investments are, in fact, too good to be true. In this story, Bankman-Fried was the shiny object. Now he's the villain, possibly worse. But this story is bigger than one person or one firm, and that's the point of this hearing.
Because he was dealing with U.S. government entities, and I would love to see them bring Gary Gensler in and ask him about this BS.
It's not just about misconduct at FTX, but about how to protect consumers in the financial system.
You cannot protect consumers. Stop trying to protect consumers. Stop trying to protect consumers. Consumers are stupid and ignorant, and they will do the most stupid things. If you want to make sure that a consumer does not make a bad move, make smarter consumers. Make smarter consumers. Make people liable for all of the bullshit that they actually are doing and investing in. Make them suffer. Because I will tell you, if somebody is that stupid that they would dump every single penny that they own in the world into a fantasy, into a belief that this is going to be the next greatest thing. All the money that I've invested in all the little crypto things that I do, or the stocks that I've purchased, that's money that was possibly just going to be used to buy some more alcohol, buy some more vape juice, buy a video game, any number of things. My setup here, literally, my setup here, because most of it's a write-off for the company that I work for, it didn't cost me anything. Some of it cost me a couple $100 at the most. Probably sounds like it, probably looks like it. This is literally my basement. I am in a basement of the house that I'm making payments on. And I'm happy to do that. I'm happy to make house payments. This is money that's left over. I've got a few bucks here, a few bucks there. Sure, I could use it doing X, Y, or Z, or this or that. And I decided I'm going to buy a little bit of crypto. So I bought a little bit of crypto and I watched it go up really far. I watched it go down really far on other ones. And I already counted it as a loss. So whether it goes up or down is not going to change what I'm doing. I consider it lost money anyway. But that's what you need to teach your consumers. Don't spend more than you're willing to lose. I'll tell you a little secret. I used to wear glasses. And really thick glasses. And I had LASIK done on my eyes. I had eye surgery done so that I wouldn't have to wear glasses again. As I get older, that changes a little bit. My eyesight is not as clear as it used to be. And I joke not when I say this, because doing the laser surgery was not cheap. So what I did, for about 6 months, I lived off of ramen and ground beef or sausage or whatever I could scrounge up. I joke not. This is my breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And of course, I worked in a restaurant, so I could end up with a couple of meals here and there. But man, you get burned out of eating pizza after a while. I went 6 months and I saved every freaking penny that I had. I didn't have a cell phone. I made my rent. I already had budgeted how much my rent was going to be. And man, I scrimped and saved every single penny that I possibly could. And I went and got laser surgery. Now, I could have went and got glasses for a couple $100, and I paid well over $1,000 for it. Now, you have to understand that as a musician, not making a whole lot of money, so you're working in a restaurant just to pay the bills. Plus, you've got rent, utilities, you've got other expenses like gas, and it's gas in your vehicle just to make deliveries. It's not cheap. It's rough. It's tough as all get out. But I ended up saving every single penny I had because I was like, I want to get this done so I don't ever have to buy another pair of glasses again. That's what I did. Set your mind to a goal, complete it. You will get there. You will get there. Trust me.
From unregulated crypto projects. For many investors, it might be too late. I've heard from far too many Ohioans who have money stuck at FTX.us that they tried to get out before it filed for bankruptcy.
And that was on them, because right before this happened, I just happened to hear about this news, and I still have some funds on Voyager. It's not a whole lot. It's like a very small amount, but I have some funds there, some units of trading, which of course Binance has said that they're buying it out now, so I may be able to recover some of it. I don't know. Like I said, I already counted that money as gone. We'll see what happens. I mean, it might be 2023 before I can actually file it on my tax returns. It might be 2030 before I'm able to file on my tax returns. It depends on if they ever able to liquidate whatever was caught up in there. But it taught me a very valuable lesson. Don't trust to have my shit on exchanges and pull it off before I keep it there, which most of it is anyway. But just this one particular one, I wasn't paying any attention, and it caught me on vacation. Damn. I saw what was happening. I was like, what in the hell is going on? What? And I wasn't I wasn't Johnny on the spot, but I'll tell you what. And I didn't ever invest in Celsius. But as soon as I started seeing what was happening with FTX, I think I had a couple $100 worth of things on there. Then I pulled that shit off as quick as possible. I canceled all my sell orders, and I pulled that shit and put it into another exchange. and put sell orders on it again. Same that I had before, just on a different exchange. I'm not going to play that shit. You don't need to either.
But despite Bankman-Fried's assertion that the U.S. side of FTX should be fine, corporate
Yeah. Shit's going downhill. Do you think he wants to tell people everything's going to be fine? No, because he's hoping he can recover everything back up.
proceedings are likely to drag on and on. If we're going to learn from FTX's meltdown, we must look closely at the risks from conflicts at crypto platforms that combine multiple functions. It means thinking about the kinds of disclosure that consumers and investors really need to understand how a token or crypto platform works. We can look to existing banking and security laws for time-tested approaches to oversee and examine entities that want Americans to trust them with their money to protect.
I don't know if you could hear that, but that was some hard thunder in my neighborhood. Woo! Loud.
Consumers in the financial system. We need a comprehensive framework that looks at crypto products for what they are, not looking at these products the way crypto executives want them to be or want to tell us they should be. I look for.
See, this is why any stock that you buy, just think every time that he's saying crypto, that he's talking about stocks. Just look at it that way. Every time that he talks about crypto, he is basically saying stocks. This is the best way that I can describe the way that these people are or should be describing it, because it is no different. And there's regulation on stock. The thing that'll screw you on crypto is the stock market closes. Crypto never closes. It is constantly being exchanged all across the entire globe. We're not talking about one or two countries. It's not just your country or your state. It is across the entire globe. People are constantly trading crypto. They want to buy low, they want to sell high. They want to buy low, they want to sell high. And some people do well. Some people will be the suckers and lose all their shit. Keep that in mind. Whenever you're going out there buying your little dog coin, just remember that if everybody is buying it, you're probably the sucker that is buying it from them whenever it's going up.
Forward to working with Treasury Secretary Yellen.
Look into Yellen and Gensler.
We've been working with her to step up and lead this government-wide regulatory.
And what did they do? Just not even days after this, they talked about creating a CBDC, which is basically crypto money that is backed by the US dollar. And it's no different. It is basically exchanging all of your US dollars for crypto dollars, is basically what they're saying. So they can tell you how much money that they're going to print. They can turn on the money machine no different than they would turn it off in a second. It's regulated the same way that the US dollar is. They're just using it as a different form, as a non-physical piece, which you have to understand that part of the money that's being spent is on those physical dollars.
Approach and the other financial regulators assure there's an all of government approach, just as we've done in the past. Anything less simply won't work.
Not true.
Consider it to me.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I want to thank our witnesses for joining us this morning. We're here to discuss the fallout after the collapse of FTX, and some Americans very likely suffered significant losses from the bankruptcy of FTX and Sam Bankman-Fried's.
Of course, there's always going to be fallout whenever you put your money into a Ponzi company. But they're still not getting into who funded that Ponzi company. Let's see if they do here.
Misconduct. On Monday, we saw the arrest of Mr. Bankman-Fried, and this came as a surprise to no one, with the possible exception of Mr. Bankman-Fried. We owe it to each customer to get to the bottom of the FTX implosion, and any violations of the law should be aggressively prosecuted.
Exactly.
The Department of Justice and other enforcement agencies should expeditiously investigate the unseemly relationship between a company that was effectively a hedge fund and an exchange entrusted with customer funds. While all the facts have not yet come to light, we've clearly witnessed wrongdoing that is almost certainly illegal. There was unauthorized lending of customer assets to an affiliated entity, and there were apparently fraudulent promises to investors and customers about FTX's operations.
And pay really close attention to what Toomey is saying here, because he's basically pointing out a specific company and not trying to blame it on the overall of everything. Unlike you will see the Democrats will be blaming the overall, everything is bad. This is no different than what they did in the 90s that created the PMRC. A lot of people think, oh, it was the religious right. It was those evil Bible thumpers that were saying, oh, this is the devil's music. This is horrible. Well, the devil, those people were out there. But you have to remember that it was at the time Senator Al Gore's wife, Tipper Gore, a staunch Democrat, that was saying that there's subliminal sounds in the music that are telling children to worship the devil. This is no different. Be logical in what they're saying.
These are outrageous and completely unacceptable.
But yes, they're like,
the SEC also believes that FTX committed fraud against equity investors.
Pay attention to what he's saying.
They're going to pursue that, as they should. But I want to underscore a bigger issue.
Well, I don't know about you, but is it common to be wearing leather mini or leather skirt in the House or in this committee? Because that's an interesting outfit to be wearing leather. That's not cloth, that's leather.
Here, and that is that the wrongful behavior that occurred here is not specific to the underlying asset. What appears to have happened here is a complete breakdown in the handling of those assets. In our discussion of FTX today,
that's a very important point.
I hope we're able to separate the likely illegal actions from perfectly lawful and innovative cryptocurrencies. Now, it's important to define this space. Cryptocurrencies are analogized to tokens, but they're actually software. The software protocols that are foundational to the crypto ecosystem are like operating systems, and then applications are run on top of these operating systems.
Wow, this guy actually knows a little bit more about what he's talking about. Pay attention to just some random old, stiff under the collar, I mean, look, dude. This guy right here has a receding hairline that's worse than my ball sack. I'm just kidding. He has this massive receding hairline, and he's speaking very coherently about what cryptocurrency is in some of the most simplified terms. And I'm sure somebody else did the research and actually gave it to him, and not just a bunch of talking points that they pulled off of some, random I hate crypto website.
Currently, there are many competing operating systems and many apps running on them. There's nothing intrinsically good or evil about software. It's about what people do with it. And with this analogy in mind, what we should all understand here is one simple thing. The code committed no crime. FTX and cryptocurrencies are not the same thing. FTX was opaque, centralized, and dishonest.
Now pay attention, because they're going to be talking about centralized and decentralized. Centralized means that one person has control over the whole thing. Crypto, in its pure form, is decentralized. The more decentralized it is, means no one person can make that decision to steal your money. Unlike, for example, the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve, let's put it this way, the Federal Reserve tomorrow could come out and they could literally tell you that the dollar is worth absolutely nothing tomorrow. And if they did that, it wouldn't matter how many dollars they printed, it would still be worth absolutely nothing. They could say it does nothing. Unlike crypto, which is decentralized, which means that people have to vote on whether it is worth something or not worth anything. No different than your dog coins. Everybody might say that your dog coin is worth millions of dollars per coin. And that's where Satoshi Nakamoto or group of people is why they created Bitcoin. It was for this reason right here that Bitcoin was created, because it is its value of itself. People say, well, what is a Bitcoin worth? It's saying that it's worth, $68,000. It's worth $1 million. It's worth $2. It's worth $100. It's worth this. It's worth that. No. The best way to look at it is a Bitcoin is worth 1 Bitcoin. That's it. 1 Bitcoin is worth 1 Bitcoin. And inside those Bitcoins, you have lower denominators called sats. Those sats are worth 1 sat, 1 Satoshi. That's it. It's as simple as that. And whenever you break it down to that point, that those Satoshis are worth a sat. And you get enough Satoshis, it ends up being worth a Bitcoin. I forget the actual decimal amount, but it's like 100,000 or whatever Satoshis equal 1 Bitcoin. But a Bitcoin will always be worth 1 Bitcoin. A Bitcoin, if you want to equate it to what it's going to be worth according to Ethereum, or you want to equate what it's going to be worth in fiat currency, that's completely different. This is where everybody gets confused with it. You can trace where every single Bitcoin is and where it goes. I could show you my wallet right now that has, I don't know how many Satoshis. That's what it's worth. That's just one of my wallets that I have. That's the wallet that I might show at some point in time. And if you want to donate, just send me a nice little chat in there and it says, I'm willing to donate ever amount of Satoshis. It might be $1 worth of Satoshis. It might be $100 worth of Satoshis. It could be $1 million worth of Satoshis. It's still going to be that amount of Bitcoin. It's never going to change. A Bitcoin is always going to be worth a Bitcoin. The same way that the dollar is still only worth $1. If you have $100, you have $100. Your spending or buying for that $100 might not be the same depending on inflation, which according to everybody, inflation is absolutely like horrendous right now. And that was what Bitcoin was designed for, was to be a hedge against inflation. I am not telling you to buy Bitcoin with your fiat dollars, because you might have to feed yourself. And the only way that you're going to be able to buy food to feed yourself or your family is by using fiat currency. That's what you do with fiat currency. If you want to transfer your Bitcoin into fiat currency, is no different than transferring your Bitcoin into Dogecoin, for example. It's no different than that. How much Bitcoin can buy how much Dogecoin? That's what value is, and that's what he's going to explain here. Oh, I suck. Remember that.
Cryptocurrencies usually are open source, decentralized, and transparent.
Yes.
To those who think this episode justifies banning crypto, and I've actually heard that suggested, I'd ask you to think about several other historical parallels. The 2008 financial crisis involved obvious misuse of products related to mortgages.
And that a lot of these people on the panel were involved in.
Did we decide to ban mortgages? Of course not. Commodity brokerage firm run by former New Jersey Senator John Corzine collapsed after customer funds, including U.S. dollars, were misappropriated to fill a shortfall from the firm's trading losses. Nobody suggested that the problem was the U.S. dollar. or that we should ban it.
This guy is making the exact same point, but he's doing it much more articulately than your next Democrat senators and your representatives are going to be saying.
With FTX, the problem is not the instruments that were used. The problem was the misuse of customer funds, gross mismanagement, and likely illegal behavior.
Exactly.
So let's talk about what comes next. Some of my colleagues have suggested somehow pausing cryptocurrency before we pass legislation. This is a profoundly misguided, not to mention impossible idea. Short of enacting...
And the reason for that is, the reason for them being able to ban cryptocurrency is no different than them saying, well, we're going to stop the flow of water whenever the dam's already broken.
Draconian authoritarian policies, cryptocurrency cannot be stopped.
Yes.
If we tried, the technology would simply migrate offshore. Cryptocurrency does not need brick and mortar facilities to operate. And typing computer code should clearly be seen as a form of protected speech. Are we going to decide to pause the Constitution in order to stop crypto? This is exactly the kind of mindset that has driven this activity to the darker and less regulated parts of the world. Now, if Congress had passed legislation to create a well-defined regulatory regime with sensible guardrails, we'd have multiple U.S. exchanges competing here under the full force of those laws and regulations. In that scenario, it's not clear that FTX would have ever existed, at least on the scale that it did, not if we had American companies that were an alternative and properly regulated. The complete indifference to an appropriate regulatory regime by both Congress and the SEC probably contributed to the rise of operations like FTX. Others have
And you notice he said with the SEC, think about Mr. Gary Gensler,
suggested that we refrain from addressing cryptocurrency at all because we wouldn't want to legitimize its use. Well, I think that is both misguided and irresponsible. Congress can and should offer a sensible approach for the domestic regulation of these activities. I think we should start with stablecoins. This is an activity that my colleagues, we can analogize to existing traditional financial products.
And this is where they want to bring in the CBDCs.
It's clear bipartisan agreement that stablecoins need consumer protections. There are virtually none in place now. I've proposed a framework that would do that. Senator Lummis and Gillibrand have also proposed a framework. Congress also needs to determine the criteria and the disclosures by which issuance of digital assets will be regulated. And we should acknowledge the possibility that there's certain token issuance like Bitcoin that don't need that kind of regulation. We should also clearly delineate regulations for the secondary market trading of these assets, including at exchanges like FTX US. Some of my colleagues have begun this important work. We can provide sensible consumer protections for which there would be very broad agreement while still allowing for the development of applications that are going to run on operating systems that we can't even imagine today. Just as I don't think any of us ever imagined applications like Uber operating on iOS today.
All right. And I had one of my buddies, really very smart guy. Whenever I say smart, I mean Brian. You know, I'm talking about you. You're a very bright guy. This is someone, this person I'm talking about is someone that engineers would come to and ask him questions to solve a problem. And he was not an engineer. He never got a degree. He just is very bright, able to figure out where the problems lie. And what he's talking about is this not going to stop crypto? You can't stop crypto. It's already there. What he's talking about is basically you need to buy in, you need to be paying attention to where your crypto is being used, what it's being used for. No different than Visa, MasterCard, or any of those other companies that are basically turning fiat into a digital transfer. The digital transfer is sent to somebody else, and they're able to execute that digital transfer to make a purchase. And whenever I sit down and I explained what crypto was to him, he was like, well, that's pretty simple. And I sent him some resources because I'm not the brightest. I'm not a crypto bro, I'm not going to tell you to buy anything. You buy whatever the fuck you want to. But it also lends for those crypto things that you need to pay attention to what that crypto is doing. If you support what it's doing and it's supporting a cause. I mean, think about this. How many billions of dollars are spent every year? And this is something that I deal with on a regular basis on property. Imagine you want to buy this piece of property in the middle of the Ozarks, and you want to prove that this property is yours. You're given a deed to that property, and you pay taxes on that particular deed of that property that you own in the middle of the Ozarks. Maybe it's an acre, maybe it's 100 acres. Doesn't matter. You own that property, and you have proof that you own that property. It's no different with crypto. You have proof that this is mine, and you can easily put all of that information into that particular crypto exchange or your local county recorder. It just makes it faster and easier to access. So whenever it's time to close, you can say, I want to sell my property for 10 million Bitcoin. And that's the price of my property. It's worth 10 million Bitcoin. So somebody says, well, listen, I've got 10 million Bitcoin. I'll be happy to transfer that 10 million Bitcoin over to you to buy that piece of property. And that Bitcoin happens to have a fiat currency number associated with it. Now, at the point that you transfer that over, you're welcome to keep that Bitcoin forever, whatever you want to. But you can basically say, this piece is yours. This is how crypto works. It's pretty straight and simple, straightforward. It simplifies a lot of your tax codes because, hell, if the tax man's coming and he says, guess what? Your tax bill is going to be 5 Bitcoin. That's what your taxes are. Then there you go. Now you've got your taxes, 5 Bitcoin. You need to come up with that. There you go.
So let me conclude with this. It's absolutely essential to investigate any fraud and violations of existing law and prosecute those who are committing those crimes. Congress owes it to the American people to do so.
Yes.
This is fundamentally not about the kind of assets that were held by FTX. It's about what individuals did with those assets.
Exactly. And the point that the Republicans have been trying to get to is saying you need to hold liable the people that were basically taking. It's no different than me putting $1 million into a bank account. I put in $1 million. I expect that $1 million to be there. I should be able to walk in to that particular bank and say, I want to withdraw my $1 million, and they are obligated to give you that $1 million. Now, in the process of me transferring that $1 million, they may loan little pieces of that out to other people. They may say, listen, we've got these investments that we want to put these into so we can sort of get a return. We're going to back Ukraine with that $1 million. We're going to use $900,000 of your $1 million, and we're going to back Ukraine in this proxy war or this new thing that they're going to be doing. They're building a railroad that goes from one end of Ukraine to the other, and that's what we're going to invest in. And you might get a little bit of profit out of it. We're going to use those dollars to do it. Banks do this all the time. It's no different than what crypto is doing.
Individuals can be tremendously empowered by the use and access to cryptocurrencies. Cryptocurrencies can protect against inflation when governments irresponsibly manage their own currencies. They can provide useful services without the need for a company or a middleman. And they can let individuals preserve the freedom to transact privately.
And that's the big part right there, is they do not want individuals to transact without the government getting their little cut of the pie. When you think about this, say, for example, that my buddy Joe, he says, I want to buy a car off of you. And he lives in Michigan. I live in Georgia. My car is worth over $1 million. I'm just using this as an example. Now, for him to actually carry $10 million in cash to me and hand it to me, he could be stopped by the TSA and they would consider that an illegal transfer and they could take all that money away from him. But I say, I'll tell you what, Joe, you come down here and you give me $10 million worth of Bitcoin and I'll sell the car to you. Or $1 million. My car is worth $1 million. You bring me $1 million worth of Bitcoin. You know what? He doesn't have to do anything except for carry his phone with him. He can sit down. We can sign the contract. We can say, hey, here you go, Joe. This car is yours. You transfer over that $1 million. He does it at a click of the button, and it's almost instantaneously within a few seconds. I've got confirmation that that money was transferred over, and I could say, here, Joe, here is that car that you wanted. You're welcome to do with it whatever you want to. That's how Bitcoin operates. Boom. He didn't have to travel across state lines with large portions of money. He didn't have to do a bank transfer that probably would have taken about 20% or 10% of those funds and charged him an outrageous fee just to transfer that money. It would have been pennies on the dollar. And guess what? It's a deal for both of us. He got that $1 million car, and I've got whatever amount of money is left over after transfer fees. Said and done. Quick transfer. And I can say, see you, Joe. Enjoy that rust bucket.
Mr. Bankman-Fried may well have committed multiple crimes.
And that's the point. It's not that he may have. He did, and he admits to it.
The SEC and DOJ will determine that. But let's remember to distinguish between human failure and the instrument with which the failure occurred. In this
Very good point.
case, the instrument is software, and the code committed no crime. And while Sam Bankman-Fried very well may have, it's important we not convict the code of anything but preserving and protecting individual autonomy. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Toomey. I'll introduce today's witnesses. Starting on my left, we'll hear from Professor Hilary J. Allen from the American University.
Yeah, don't care, because they're going to just be basically.
Fried may have engaged in good old-fashioned embezzlement, as it was.
Yeah, we already know all this stuff because they're just talking garbage.
Entrepreneurs at every stage of their life and help America involve
Yeah. We don't care.
And 10
Don't care.
company that I had 100% ownership in. I'm using my
Okay, yeah, sob story, you were a dumbass.
Yeah.
Well, she's cute.
So where to start? We need to clear up.
I don't know. For an old woman, she isn't too ugly. She's actually got like a nice pretty little makeup to her face. But anyhow, I digress because these people are basically introducing how great they are. She's from the Cato Institute Center for Monetary and Financial Alternatives and blah, blah, blah.
Publicly recording transaction data and allowing users to self-custody assets.
Yes, that's what we want to hear. But we want to get to these boneheads that are going to be talking about, because who's this guy right here? Let's turn off the subtitles. Subtitles off. There we go. So Ben McKenzie is an actor and cryptocurrency critic.
An undergraduate degree in economics, such as my ever do as an
Yeah. Never heard of Ben McKenzie.
One-off caused by one immoral fraudster rather.
Okay, so this right here. Senator Sherrod Brown is Democrat, Ohio Banking, Housing, and Urban Affairs Committee Chair. And he's asking stupid questions. We're going to fast forward through all their stupid questions because that's all they are. Let's get to the meat of it. Kevin O'Leary, which is O-Shares ETF indexing firm chair, private equity venture investor. I don't trust anything that he has to say. Toomey goes through a bunch of shit. More shit. More garbage. Now, here we get to Senator Jack Reed. And he's going to ask some really stupid questions. How do I know that he's going to ask some stupid questions? It's because he's a fucking Democrat and he's going to ask stupid questions.
I'm sorry, you're about 3 minutes over. You have any follow-up, Senator Toomey?
I had another topic, so if we do a second round, I'll
Okay,
take it
thank
up
you.
then. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you, Senator Reed of Rhode Island.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, panel, for your insight.
Oh, come on. What just happened? Come on.
Audited financial statements.
No,
Was FTX required to disclose transactions with related parties like Mr. Bankman's Fees hedge
Yes.
fund called Alameda Research,
no,
Yes.
and also Mr. O'Leary's example? That would be required to be disclosed. Was FTX required to have a chief financial officer or disclose whether a financial expert was on the board of directors?
No.
no,
Was FTX auditor required to attest to the effectiveness of the company's internal and
No.
corporate controls?
no,
And if FTX had been a publicly traded company, would it have been required to make the disclosures and attestations that we've just discussed?
Yes.
sorry, I missed that question.
If FTX had been a publicly traded company, would it have been required to make the disclosures and attestations?
See, these are absolutely stupid questions because me, not being a financial guru, crypto guru, or anything, can answer these questions.
That we've just discussed.
Yes,
Thank you very much. And it's just not that FTX is a private company. In fact, just about all the biggest companies in the crypto industry are also private.
He's asking absolutely asinine questions, and it's fucking annoying and stupid and ridiculous. And he's going to continue to ask these kinds of stupid and asinine questions that he already knows the answer to because he's a fucking moron. He's basically trying to say crypto is fucking horrible. Crypto is bad. Whether you believe it or not, it doesn't matter to me one way or the other. Buy your crypto, don't buy your crypto. Nobody is forcing these people to spend all of their money on crypto, but that's how it is. Nobody ever told anybody that they needed to buy stock in Apple. But people bought stock in Apple and they actually made money off of it. And some of them made dividends, and some people sold it off and made money, and some people bought back in. It doesn't matter. This is no different.
Held. In September, I introduced S4857, the Private Markets Transparency and Accountability Act, which would require the nation's biggest private companies, including FTX, to disclose basic information about their financial condition and comply with basic corporate governance requirements. And according to a letter from the North American Securities Administration, this legislation, in their words, would have made it easier for all of us to spot or prevent the alleged fraud and other misconduct at FTX earlier.
No, and no, that is not true, because scammers always find a way to scam people out of money. Who is backing FTX? Who is some of the biggest supporters of FTX? And I'm looking at you, Gary.
So, Mr. Chairman, I would ask unanimous consent to include this letter in the record.
Without objection, so.
Yeah, sure. Whatever.
The whole point is that we've all talked about the need for regulation, and I think that's obvious. And we have many mechanisms pending here in the Senate and the House to do that. We just have to move quickly. I would suggest this.
No, you don't have to move quickly. You move slowly, you can move quickly. But this is the reason why that I created this video in the first place is for people like this right here that are saying, oh, we need to move quickly on, basically stopping anybody from making a free transfer of goods. If we went back to the old system of actually bartering, I have 3 hogs and I need 20 pounds of hay. I will sell you my 3 hogs for 20 pounds of hay. Sweet. That's a transaction. It's no different than if you're doing any sort of crypto exchange. Except the government wants to get their cut out of this because they think that they are your rulers. They don't realize that we should be a self-governed state and we should be able to transfer funds between each other free of taxes and tariffs from our government. And of course, these guys right here don't get paid unless they collect those taxes and tariffs. These men are the tax man.
This is a good place to start. And a final question, Professor Allen, do you think that would have helped illuminate what was going on in FTX?
Yes, I think so. I mean, attestation
No, she's absolutely full of shit. It wouldn't have changed how FTX was operating.
and proof of reserves and other forms of accounting disclosures common in the crypto industry, they don't include the rigor, the independence, and the professional skepticism we get from auditors. But I would note that we should be wary of FASB's moves to implement fair value accounting for crypto assets, because accepting market valuations from the crypto industry could potentially undermine the value of the audit function, and that's something to be wary of.
Thank you very, very much.
She's full of shit.
When we talk about crypto tokens, in fact, it's reported that FTX held about $900 million in liquid assets and $9 billion in liabilities when it failed. And the vast majority of FTX assets were illiquid cryptocurrencies created and promoted by FTX and Alameda.
Well, and basically what he's talking about is the FTT token. So basically, they were saying the FTT token is worth, 100 bottle caps. And everybody else said, well, I'll tell you what, I will take your 100 bottle caps and I will turn them into $100. And they sold their shit.
And the company held them at wildly optimistic valuations that turned out to bear little resemblance to reality. Can you explain how aggressive valuation practices contributed to the failure of FTX and put customers at risk, Professor?
Sure,
And you notice that he's just asking this one person. He's not asking the other people that are on this board at all.
outlined in my written testimony, many crypto assets are created out of thin air, and there's no real basis for their valuation.
There is always a basis to valuation. If I think, for example, and I'm just using this as a hypothetical, I want to say that this glass of scotch, whiskey, bourbon, whatever, that I think that this glass of bourbon is worth $1 million. I just took $800,000 out of that $1 billion. It's not worth $1 billion anymore. Do you want to buy it? Do you want to buy it? It's going soon. That was just not 100,000. Come on, buy some more. That's no different than what FTX was doing. No different than what crypto is doing. They're saying, hey, this has some sort of intrinsic value. Somebody may want to enjoy this nice bottle of Elijah Craig, whatever. They may be saying, hey, this is wonderful bourbon, and I want to buy every single bit of it because I enjoy this particular thing. I enjoy the service that it's providing. To me, it is worth something. That's no different than any sort of crypto exchange, no different than any sort of stock exchange. And your dumbasses are going to say, oh, well, no, it's not worth anything. Well, it's not worth anything to you, so don't fucking buy it. If you don't like the product, don't buy it. My wife buys face cream to make her face feel soft and supple. She would spend any amount of money to make sure that she doesn't get any wrinkles on that beautiful skin of hers. Me, on the other hand, I'm happy just grabbing a hold of a bar of lava soap and scrubbing my face until it turns raw and red, because I'm not really worried about my beauty. My wife, on the other hand, might be worried about her beauty, might want to spend money on things that are absolutely ridiculous and really didn't change anything. All she had to do was use a bit of my lava soap, lather it up, and wash her face, and she would have been just as clean. But to her, the value of something is worth more than the value to me.
There's simply no way to perform a sanity check on the valuations that are provided, as those assets trade entirely on sentiment. And so when assets trade entirely on sentiment, meaning what other people think they're worth, that creates a space where significant amount of leverage can be created and fraud can easily go undetected.
And she's absolutely full of shit right there. Yes, fraud can always happen, but fraud can also happen in the dollar. It can happen in any particular stock or bond or any shit like that. The problem is these people are not getting to the root cause of where FTX was fucking up. And they're skirting around the whole thing. This is why I say that Sam Bankman-Fried is the fall guy for your bullshit.
Thank you very much. Again, I think the one theme that seems to be consistent is that the need to regulate not just this industry, but private entities that are controlling a huge amount of funds that are investing in ways that are not obvious to the public or even to their own shareholders or equity owners. And we have to move, and I would suggest as a starting place, the legislation I proposed. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
No, it's not going to happen.
Senator Menendez of New Jersey is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A lot of securities
These people are fools.
regulation essentially comes down to one thing: what actions are and are not permissible when one person is handling another person's money. And by and large, we in Congress, the securities industry, and the general public have agreed on the major principles that should guide that activity. For instance, as you point out in your testimony, Professor Allen, brokers are not permitted to use customer funds to finance their business. They are required to fully disclose conflicts of interest. And when dealing with retail investors, they are required to go further and mitigate certain conflicts. FTX didn't seem to have done any of this. And if they had, it seems like a lot of harm would have been prevented. So, Professor Allen, is there any reason why we shouldn't apply the same broad regulatory principles that are now in place with the traditional financial sector?
No, because the traditional financial sector can scam just as quickly.
Digital assets?
I see no reason. The reason we typically hear is that crypto is different because it's decentralized, but in fact, it's not decentralized. At every level, there are people controlling things.
She is wrong in that aspect, and she's giving really bad information because there are a lot of cryptos that are very, very decentralized. Nobody has absolute control over them, but it is up to you, dear reader, to figure out which one of those are actually decentralized. Do your due diligence and know the people you're dealing with.
So, we heard that that Bitcoin was decentralized. Well, Bitcoin is controlled by a few core software developers.
Wrong, and wrong. So she is giving really bad information because she's saying Bitcoin is controlled by a few centralized players. Is that true? Or did they just happen to buy at the right time?
More than 10, and they can make changes to the software, and then that software.
No, that's wrong. That's a lie. That's not true.
Software is implemented by mining pools, and there's just a few of them. So in all these spaces, there are definitely people, often a very few people, pulling the strings. But the fact of the matter is that they are unidentified and unregulated.
Actually, they can be completely identified by their wallets, and you can search out their wallet address by the people that actually hold the most Bitcoin. You can actually do a simple Google search, and you can figure this shit out by who holds those funds.
And that is not an ideal space to be in.
All right. Who controls the U.S. dollar? Think about that. Who controls the U.S. dollar? Do the U.S. customers that actually are buying and selling goods constantly using fiat currency? Who actually controls those dollars? Who controls inflation? Who controls inflation in the U.S.? What is your dollar worth in the U.S.? All the stuff she's saying is somewhat true, but it's not quite, because she's not giving the whole story. Because the Fed tomorrow could say, We are going to print $1 million, $1 billion, $1 trillion worth of. We can just open up those printing presses. We can make every single dollar that you spend worth about 2 cents. They could do that tomorrow. Is that centralized? That's centralized. They can centralize every single penny that you hold in your pocket.
Yeah. Mr. O'Leary, in your testimony, you said you hope that the events at FTX would, quote, put renewed focus on implementing domestic regulation. Do you agree that FTX customers and perhaps your own investments would have been better off if FTX had complied with the existing regulation?
FTX complied with all of the existing regulations. They complied with everything that they were supposed to do. They were just basically running the system like you designed it to run. They were basically using your words against you, you dumbass.
We have that bars brokers from trading with customer funds?
Absolutely. But they were not compelled to do that because they were offshore and unregulated. I think the model.
No, they were still regulated by U.S. rules and regulations, and this is why they got busted.
Will not work. There's examples of how regulated exchanges that are attached to broker-dealers have worked. You only have to look up to Canada, the OSC order, where BitBuy wallets are controlled by the regulator. They limit the number of tokens. They limit the margin. They limit the lending. They do an exhaustive.
And this is what I was talking about. SBF is just the fall guy for regulating crypto to the point where it's just like, well, what's the point of owning any sort of crypto? Because, well, I can't buy or sell it anywhere unless I go to an offline exchange, and they're going to charge an exorbitant amount for me just to actually transfer funds from one person to another. You have to understand that these motherfuckers are really, really pissed off that I can say, hey, you know what? I'll give you X amount of Dogecoin or whatever crypto in exchange for a product or service. And they can't do anything about it. That's why they want to regulate it.
Test, a proof of reserves. We need, that's just the rules they implemented that they just copied from their own exchanges.
Right.
We need to do the same thing here. It works. It's been proven to work. There's millions of Canadians that have accounts that are working under a very.
Yes, but they're also limiting the amount that somebody can actually transfer using crypto. They're saying you can't hold any more than X amount of dollars, Canadian dollars, US dollars, whatever, in any sort of crypto. And they can't touch it. If somebody says, you know what, I want to do an $800,000 exchange worth of, fucking tomato coin or whatever the fuck, there's nothing that Canadian government can do. They want to make a transfer to somebody in the United States for whatever service they want to provide, because now they can't fucking tax it.
Very strict regulatory environment. We can implement the same.
Well, I agree. We already know what should and should not be allowed when one person is handling another person's money. Whether we're talking about a new celebrity-endorsed coin or an index.
And see, they're bringing it back to a celebrity-induced coin, but these are the same celebrities that I guarantee you, if they fucking walked in that building right now, you'd want to be glad-handing with them in a fucking heartbeat because you're a fucking shill.
Fun. I think we'd be well served to keep in mind the basic principles that have largely saved and served investors in the markets well for decades. As I was listening to some.
What's that? Tell me one. Tell me one. Tell me one. Fucking Bob Menendez. Tell me one that's actually protected investors.
For your testimony back in the office, it all seems like you looked at this as more of a security than a currency at the end of the day, and that makes it pretty clear for me. In the wake of FTX collapse, many crypto firms have attempted to reassure the public of their soundness by hiring outside auditors to provide proofs of reserve. However, the quality of these audits are inconsistent and oftentimes provide an incomplete picture of the company's assets and liabilities. Professor Allen, can you explain some of the flaws in these reports and why they are not as helpful to investors as the crypto industry claims?
Well, I mean, there is the fundamental issue that where do you
And you notice that he's going back to the same woman every single time. Sorry, give me a second. He's going back to the same shill that he was asking earlier because he's not going to ask anybody else on this panel because they may disagree with his assessment of stupidity. And that's really what it boils down to, is an assessment of stupidity that these people have about crypto and what it is. Like I said, I am not a crypto shill. I will not tell you to buy any sort of crypto. You can buy whatever the fuck you want to. If you're sitting there saying, you know what, I think this is worth X amount of fucking bullshit, then I'm happy to buy that fucking X amount of bullshit for whatever fucking price it is. Your choice.
even get the valuation number from these assets? Do we treat them on a sort of a fair value accounting basis? If so, we're essentially accepting whatever the market says about these asset prices, and then they're entirely based on sentiment. So, you know, in addition, even if we put that aside, the actual attestations, et cetera, that we're getting, as I said, they don't have this skepticism that we expect from professional auditors who look at the financial statements to find red flags. They're required.
The reason they want to have auditors in there is because the auditors can say, oh, this is absolute bullshit. This is garbage. It isn't worth anything. Whether it is or not, it doesn't matter. You're going to take the auditor's word for it. Would you not? If somebody came in and said that, you know, your 1969 Cougar convertible is only worth $2, you're going to be pissed off, aren't you? You're going to say, my 1969 Cougar, this guy wants to pay me, you know, $100,000 for it because it's in mint condition. It's completely been restored. Everything is all original. It's only got, you know, 2,000 miles on it. This car is worth so much money. Why? But the auditor comes in and says, no, back up, home chicken, because your money is not worth that much. That nice, you know, 1969 Cougar, it's not worth that much. But you know what? That nice auditor that you're dealing with, that says, oh, it's not worth that much, and he knocks down the price. Well, that auditor will turn around and buy that product. And then guess what? That auditor can turn around and say, hey, that product, that 1969 Cougar, it's actually worth $1 billion. And I have 100 of them. Look at that. I just made $100 billion. That's why I do not trust any of these motherfuckers. And you should not either.
To look for red flags in these attestations and proof of reserves. It's basically just the accountants sort of reporting what they've been told by the industry.
No.
And she is correct in that.
One of the things I'm concerned about is the extent that cryptocurrency becomes integrated with the financial system, and therefore the risk to the financial system, which up to now is...
Okay, let's put it this way. Let's break this down. How much is all of the crypto that's out there worth? It's a best guess. Right now, currently, what is the market cap of crypto? What is if I took every single bit of crypto that's ever been created, I'm talking including the shit coins. How much are those shit coins worth? And all of the Bitcoin, the Ethereum, the Solana, the Cardano, all of those coins, what are those worth? What is your market cap? It is what? Under $1 trillion? What is the US dollar valued at? What is the US dollar valued at? And how much assets is the US dollar backing? We're not talking in the hundreds of billions. We're not talking the hundreds of thousands. We're talking in the trillions. And that money just keeps flowing. All that money is being spent on buying and selling of goods, assets, transfers. So you're talking about a little portion that doesn't even top $1 trillion as compared to the hundreds of trillions of dollars that's being spent every day throughout the entire world. These people do not want you to have freedom of your funds. They never did. They never will. Because you just cut out the middleman. You just made their job completely worthless.
Has been pretty stable. And that is something I'm concerned about. Let me close on this. Prior to its collapse, FTX was well known for huge spending on celebrities.
Who made them well known? It wasn't just the celebrities. FTX was transferring money between the Ukraine and the United States government.
Celebrity endorsements. Dozens of sports stars, actors received millions of dollars to generate.
And so did a bunch of politicians.
Generate hype for FTX and assure the public that crypto was a safe investment. There have even been reports that FTX was pursuing a $100 million sponsorship deal with Taylor Swift earlier this year, even as the firm was hemorrhaging money. So FTX isn't the only firm doing this. Endorsements from public figures are just one of the factors contributing to misinformation about crypto. Mr. Shank.
Oh, now we're going to get into misinformation, disinformation. Well, this is absolute bullshit because, yeah, this was complete garbage. But this was an exchange. It wasn't the actual product itself. It was the middleman. It's no different than them being a bank. So what this guy is equating, Mr. Bob Menendez, is equating crypto to is the exchange that's involved in it. But where was Mr. Bob Menendez whenever you had places like Lehman Brothers, Barney Madoff? Do you think he was doing crypto? Saying, think about it.
And how can we combat the spread of crypto disinformation and encourage
Disinformation.
investor education?
Use words that are accurate. The cryptocurrencies are not currencies. We need to classify them as securities properly. I also think that we should consider treating crypto like gambling and having
everything you do is no different than gambling. You're buying stocks, you're buying bonds. It's no different than gambling. All of it is a gamble.
potential limitations on advertising and disclosures.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Senator. Senator Tester from Montana is recognized.
Yeah, I want to thank the chairman and ranking member for having this hearing, and I want to thank the folks who testified today for being here to testify.
Blah, blah, blah,
I appreciate
blah.
it.
Shut the fuck up.
I am concerned that we're signaling to people that this is a credible and sound investment. But as we've seen lately, there are clearly bad actors. Crypto has been peddled everywhere from the internet to the Super Bowl as get-rich schemes or safe places to put your retirement savings. But things look pretty uncertain right now, and that's a best-case scenario.
Okay, so he's making good sense, but he's babbling now.
Ultimately, I want to make sure the taxpayers aren't left holding the bag. These may be interesting technologies, but I've yet to see how it can be useful in a real world without substantial risk to for Americans. I'm skeptical, but I'm here to hear from both you, the proponents and opponents, and that's why I'm glad you're all here today. Professor Allen, when you were in front of this committee about a year ago today, as a matter of fact,
Exactly.
you discussed similarities with synthetic products, and you highlighted concerns that unlike 2007, these products are targeted at institutions and individuals. As we've seen larger and larger issues play out in this industry over the past year, how has your concern that you expressed a year ago played out?
So in some ways, I've been heartened by the fact that the banking regulators have really kept this stuff out of the banking system. And I think that's why we're
But they won't. They will not keep it out of the banking system because they are being absolutely destroyed by crypto.
talking about the investors of FTX being harmed rather than everybody being harmed. But still, I mean, I think the idea that crypto is trying to disrupt banking is inaccurate. Crypto and banking would love to merge.
She is absolutely wrong in this. Do not believe what she is saying because crypto does not want to merge with banking, but banking wants to merge with crypto. It's a very volatile situation because banking sees that they're doing it better, they're doing it faster, they're doing it quicker, they're actually cutting cost and doing crypto. Think about this. If I have a wallet that has ABC coin. ABC coin is worth X amount of dollars. You know what? I can walk over to somebody and I can say, click, click, boom, here you go. Here's that $100,000 worth of ABC coin. You sell me $100,000 worth of product. We got a little bit of a whatever exchange might be the middleman. They make their money. I make my money. You got the product. I got my money. I'm fine. I'm out. Banks don't like that because they have to employ people to handle the banking system.
And it's the regulators that are keeping them apart. And so as we look at the banking industry trying to dip their toes into this water, I think there are a few causes for concern. Bank of New York Mellon is custodying crypto. JP Morgan is doing trades on permissionless blockchains. So I think we need...
And she's talking about things that she doesn't know about. Permissionless blockchains. Oh my God, there's no permission there.
to firm up this separation between crypto and banking in order to protect the broader financial system. But as I said, I think, banking regulation has held up pretty well so far.
It's held up pretty well so far. You're absolutely full of shit.
For you again, Professor Allen, the new bankruptcy appointed FTX CEO has warned that the U.S. entity is not solvent. American customer accounts are in doubt. What does this mean for the consumers who are utilizing FTX?
Consumers that are utilizing FTX, you are absolutely screwed because you know what? FTX took all of your money and they sent it to the Bahamian government. So all of your funds are now held by people in the Bahamas. You're fucked. Good luck.
Well, in the short term, it means that they are not going to be able to access their funds because they're tied up. In the long term, it means that they may not have any funds. So that is...
Because you allowed it.
Really devastating. And we have to think about how much of this we're willing to tolerate in the name of innovation. This is not a great innovation. I would point out that the Australian Stock Exchange spent years trying to use blockchain technology to restructure it, and it's just given up entirely because the technology was not fit for purpose.
And what about the people that have actually utilized the blockchain to make it work?
I think we need to think really hard about the costs of what's going on.
So could you tell me what this could have meant for taxpayers if legislators had gone further with blessing this industry?
Sure. The size of the subprime mortgage market in 2007 was estimated to, and I don't have my figures here, but I think it was about 1.3 trillion. And,
subprime, 1.3 trillion. The amount of actual crypto, if you looked at it in dollars, is about 1/3 of that.
We've just talked about a crypto industry, and as I said, the valuations are crazy in crypto, but we've talked about an industry that's shrunk, apparently from 3 trillion to under 1 trillion. So
You heard that, but she skipped over it very professionally.
if that amount of assets or exposure had been brought into the existing financial system, intertwined with our existing financial system, then the banks would have been in a very serious problem. They wouldn't have been able to lend. They would potentially not be able to process payments, all the things.
So why are banks lending? They're lending with the funds that you actually deposit. So every time that you deposit your money into one of those financial institutions, they're actually welcome to grab all of that fund and lend it to somebody else.
Things that we count on for our broader economic growth would be jeopardized.
She is correct, but she's not telling you the whole story.
I think there would have been an inherent response that would have required Congress to step in and bail out folks like happened in 2008?
Absolutely.
No. It is not the job of Congress, senators, the President of the United States, and this is what pisses them off about crypto.
Simply untenable to let the economy tank like that. I mean,
it had nothing to do with the economy. The economy is already fucking tanking, and you're blaming crypto on, okay, U.S. economy way up here. Crypto is way down here. The amount of money that's in crypto is way down here. The U.S. economy keeps fucking shit up. That's the reason why Bitcoin was created in the first place, is to avoid those kinds of crashes.
That's just the fact of the matter. And so that's why I think it's so critical that crypto be segregated away from banking. We do not want to make it too big to fail.
I'm not even going to go into that.
Too big to fail is problematic with any asset class. An asset that has no productive capacity, that doesn't serve any capital formation.
And I don't know if you noticed this, but this dumbass bald head motherfucker sitting back here with a fucking mask on.
Function, that just is crazy.
Mr. O'Leary, in one of the answers to one of the other senators' questions, you said that the prize for crypto is to get regulated. Is that because it gives it credibility?
It can't exist for the institutional client. The potential of crypto is for it to be indexed with sovereign wealth and pension, where about 70% of the world's wealth is actually managed. There's great interest there, particularly around Bitcoin and Ethereum and a few other platforms, but they have no infrastructure to apply to their compliance platforms. When you are managing a $900 billion fund, every day you have a massive compliant infrastructure that marks to market all your positions. There is no infrastructure for crypto. I want to make a note here just around this regulatory issue that you're raising, and it's a good one. Of all the entities that went to zero, that went to bankruptcy in the FTX portfolio, the only one that is not bankrupt out of the 130 plus, and this is, probably the best evidence of why we need regulation, is LedgerX. Why? It's regulated by the CFTC. 100% regulated. It is not bankrupt. Had the other entities been regulated wherever they were, they would too not be bankrupt. And so just look at this. This is a use case of why we need regulation. There wouldn't be this tragedy and all of this.
I agree that there should be regulation, but self-regulation is much more important than having a government entity that doesn't even know what the fuck they're talking about try to regulate something. Think about this. You are a master chef. You can cook some of the best dishes in the world, and those dishes end up being the taste is just marvelous. You could just, they're so succulent, delicious, best flavor that you ever had. But whenever regulators come in, they say, well, the ingredients that you're using, we don't approve of those ingredients. So they take those ingredients out. The ingredients weren't hurting anybody. They just weren't getting their cut from that. So you're not getting your cut. That's why you want to regulate. Regulation is best served if it is self-regulated. Self-regulation works 100% of the time because then people that are paying attention are well informed and will do it correctly.
Drama and all the rest of this stuff and the loss of billions of dollars.
I'm going to let this play. Homie needs to get a little bit of water. Starting to get a little dehydrated. Be right back. But continue watching. Continue watching.
Lack of regulation has caused some problems here, and it will continue to. And the evidence is right here. The only entity that didn't go to zero in the FTX portfolio, CFTC, forced the scrutiny, forced the transparency, forced the proof of where the assets were held and the reserves, forced the lack of commingling with the assets. They forced it. They did it. Proof positive that you can regulate this asset class.
I want to thank you all for being here today. We'll have some questions for the record, but I appreciate the hearing, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks, Senator Chester. Senator Haggerty of Tennessee is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ranking Member Toomey, thank you for holding this hearing. To all of our guests here today, I appreciate your being here. I'd like to touch on something that has been troubling me for some time. We know that FTX's collapse as the second largest exchange is continuing to have ripple effects throughout the entire digital asset industry. But if you look back to even early November, FTX didn't appear to have the necessary scale to cause an industry-wide systemic meltdown.
Who else is interested?
Binance, on the other hand, is the largest global crypto exchange, nearly 7 times larger than FTX by trading volume. At least it was in the month leading up to FTX's collapse. And Binance's market share, now the absence of FTX, I think means it will only grow. If you think about a similar implosion by Binance, that would really prove catastrophic. It would prove catastrophic for the cryptocurrency industry, and it would prove catastrophic to all of the consumers that utilize the industry. Yet U.S. regulators are limited in the extent to which they can mandate appropriate audits or appropriate disclosure of Binance's operations. Unlike the requirements placed on companies which are publicly traded here in the United States, Binance operates outside of our system. So, Ms. Shope, I'd like to start with you. How can U.S. regulators work with their global counterparts to bring transparency to Binance's activities and to understand the reserves?
Why is he talking about Binance?
I think you raise a very important point.
Why is he talking about Binance? It has nothing to do with FTX. It's completely different.
That when we talk about FTX or we talk about Binance, so much of what we're talking about is happening all outside of our shores. And the influence that U.S. regulation can have on those exchanges and other crypto projects that are not taking place here is limited. I think it's very important to have an ongoing dialogue with international regulators in order to have influence where we can. But I think the most important thing for the United
dialogue
States to do is to
doesn't matter.
create a rational crypto regulatory framework in
Tell me how dialogue worked with the Bahamian government.
the United States to try to bring some of that home so that we have maximum influence over how those businesses are operated.
I hear you, Mr. O'Leary, you touched on this just a moment ago about the impact of regulation and the certainty that it could bring. And from your perspective as an investor, Mr. O'Leary, what needs to change here in Washington from a regulatory standpoint so that capital actually does flow to U.S.-based entities and empower U.S.-based entities to win on the global stage?
Every global platform, the number one prize is to be regulated in the U.S. market, the number one financial market on earth, period. Now, when you talk about other money center banks or other financial services industries that want to do business in the U.S., they must disclose their worldwide operations. They are scrutinized by the rules we already have in place. A coordinated effort between the Canadian regulator, the US regulator, the ADGM in Abu Dhabi, the regulators in Singapore, basically laying out the ground rules for any entity that wishes to do business in the US or any of those jurisdictions, solves this problem. If Binance is not willing to, and you started by talking about them, disclose, and the reason that Sam Bankman-Fried claims he spent $3 billion was that he could not get the regulators to approve the fact that Binance owned 20% of their platform. CZ was not cooperative with any of those regulators. He was shut out of those markets, and he realized the prize was to get regulated for institutional capital. Just having 4 or 5 markets coordinate, as we do already in other securities, solves this problem in perpetuity. And all these regulators talk to each other. I've been to Abu Dhabi. I've talked to the ADGM. I seek a license there. And I've done the same in Canada. I'm an investor in the license there. These are long-term, very sound structural concepts, but it needs a coordination. And in one phone call, we can
He's
solve
talking
this problem.
out one side of his
Let me
mouth.
come back to you, Ms. Shope, for a moment, and I want to stay on this concern that I have, particularly about Binance, about the Chinese Communist Party's role and in support of that. To be clear, Binance is being proliferated around the world. It's a state-backed network. They're proliferating in emerging markets in a very predatory fashion. They're in developed markets. And again, now they have an even more open platform as FTX has been taken down. But you think
But was that the goal? Because you have to have that competition between multiple platforms for it to be valid.
about an example like Binance with ties to the CCP, a committed partner to the Belt and Road Initiative, and particularly as it expands its market dominance with the collapse of FTX, what does that spell if lawmakers here in America follow through with their threats to ban digital assets or leave the current regulatory uncertainty in place? What does it mean for the global crypto market in general? What does it mean for our nation's national security and our economic security? And most important, what does it spell?
Well, you've already fucked your economic security. Just saying.
The dominance of the U.S. dollar as the world's reserve currency.
Well, regardless of whether Binance itself is connected with the Chinese Communist Party, which Binance denies, but regardless of whether that's the case, by having a system in the United States that's unclear, that's regulatorily hostile, it could go so far as banning cryptocurrency in the United States, we would be losing the position of having the possibility to maintain American dominance for these technological innovations.
And you see how fast she backed down on her bullshit that she was saying earlier.
Deeply concerned about that.
We would also be losing many of the great minds that want to work on these types of projects that can make strides not just in blockchain and cryptocurrency, but in other technological functions as well. To the extent that the United States is not a place that people look to for economic development, that also puts the US dollar at risk.
Thank you.
U.S. dollar has been at risk ever since they were putting out loans that they are taking out loans that they could not pay back. And that's why we have been in a recession for quite a long time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks, Senator Hagerty. Senator Warren of Virginia is recognized. Senator Warner of Virginia is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and appreciate you holding this hearing. I want to echo some of the concerns my friend from Tennessee just echoed about Binance.
Yeah, you're just going to rattle on.
We know is a lie, and now millions of FTX customers around the world will suffer. So FTX is a failure of people, safeguards, and regulation.
And what did they do to actually protect people in their funds? Like I said, fools are easily parted with their money.
It's not a failure of technology. The people of the digital asset industry need to get really serious about risk management and compliance.
I will tell you what. Let me put it to you this way. go open up a crypto account. Just any random exchange, any single one of those random exchanges that are so bad and so awful and so evil, they have something called KYC. If you don't know what KYC means, know your customer, which means that they have to get a copy of your driver's license, confirm that it's actually you and not just some random person. There's a reason that those safeguards are in place. You have to have a KYC. You have to know who your customer is, because if you are, for example, you're in Honduras. I don't know anything about Honduras, so that's why I'm using it. Just say, for example, you're in Honduras and ABC crypto exchange is not regulated in that particular country. They will not do business with you. You will not be able to buy, sell, or exchange any sort of funds with that company. These regulations are already in place, and the regulations that they've already got in place, there's nothing that you can do about it. You will not be able to buy, sell, trade, or do anything on that particular exchange because you are from the wrong country. And they confirm it. Certain states in the United States, you cannot exchange crypto. You're not allowed to access any sort of crypto exchange. Those safeguards are already in place. So all of this bullshit that all these motherfuckers have to say, and the only thing that I'm going to say in this is SBF is a fall guy for all of the failings of our monetary system. That's all that I'm bringing to light. I don't care if you buy, sell crypto, if you own crypto, if you put it on an exchange. I don't know anything about your personal preferences or what the fuck you're doing with your money. That is entirely up to you. But if you're not doing your own due diligence on understanding that you're being lied to, those funds that you might be putting in might be used for something else entirely. That is the trick. That is the scam. That is the play that people are doing. If you want to invest in me, send me your money. Send me your money. But don't be fooled in thinking that the government or any government can actually protect you from your own stupidity. Be your own boss. Be your own brand. Be your own thing. Do your own thing and be righteous in what you do. And on that, I am going to end this because I am tired. It is late. And you have a wonderful evening. Catch you on the other side of stupidity where I am sure to be hanging out. Peace.
Exótica.